I've got mixed emotions being here because one of the worst things in my life happened very close to here, and that is the murder of my wife, Sherry, in 1985. I grew up in Franklin, Ohio, a town not far from here, with my family. I had 3 siblings. I graduated from Franklin High School in 78. Abe bought my stuff about me being a stud and all that, but I was very active in sports, and I loved sports, and I took my academics very serious. I'm a Catholic. Went to church in St. Mary's Church in Middletown, Ohio. And as Abe said, I graduated from Georgetown in 82, and then NYU in 95, I think. This is Sherry. I met her in December of 1982. And she's obviously gorgeous. She was equally bubbly. She was about 17 here. I met her when she was 19. A very caring person. She didn't know a stranger. She knew everybody. I mean, she was a friend to everybody. And she cared about people so much. I was mush in her hands. She's 5'1", 100 pounds. And, I'm a pretty big guy. But I was mush. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat after I met her. It was one of those things. And our relationship developed very fast. She had what I miss the most, she had the cutest little giggle that I really missed it. Anyway, we got married August 18th, 1984. So it was a pretty fast romance. And for Christmas of 84, I bought her a puppy dog named Bo, a little Cairn Terrier. We socialized with who ended up being her killer, David Brewer, and his wife, Kathy. We didn't get together a whole lot, but we did get together a few times. I got so many notes. I'm just going to talk. The last time we really saw the Brewers was about 2 months before Sherry was killed, which was March 21st of 85. They'd come down to our place to help us break in our new apartment. We just moved to Springdale. And they came down, and we just had pizza and a couple beers, and we talked, and Sherry was so excited. She was so excited. She told them, we're going to have a baby. We're going off birth control. And Brewer worked in an appliance rental place, and he told me, your speakers suck, Joe. He goes, your stereo speakers. And he said, I repossess these all the time in his job, his appliance rental place. And he said if he came across a good pair, he'd hold them for us. This was the end of January of 85. March 21st of 85, 10:15 at my office in downtown Cincinnati. I worked for what is now Ernst & Young. And Sherry called me, and she was all excited. She said that the Brewers had just called her, and that they had said that they found out they were pregnant, and they drove down to northern Cincinnati, which made sense because of all the nice hotels north of the GE plant, and that he had some stereo speakers for us. So Sherry ran out of the house with our puppy dog Bo that I just gotten her for Christmas. And that was the last time I talked to her. It was that phone call. While Sherry was quote-unquote missing, I remember that night I got home from about 6:30 at night, and I realized something wasn't right because she wasn't home. She was an immaculate housekeeper, and the bathroom was how I left it, which was a mess every morning. And it was not cleaned up, and so I thought, something's not right. So I started calling friends and family, and then I called, I thought, well, first, let me back up. First of all, I went around my apartment. I just knew something was really bad, and I can remember opening the closet doors and being afraid what I was going to find. And then at the same time, looking under the bed, being afraid of what I was going to find. And my mind was, I knew something had happened. And so then I thought, oh, you dummy, call the Brewers, because of that phone call I got. And it turned out that Kathy answered the phone. David was, as it turned out, was in the act of killing Sherry at that time. And I'll get into that in a second. But I said, Kathy, when you saw Sherry today, where'd Joe, we didn't see Sherry. I said, Kathy, are you pregnant? She goes, no, I'm not pregnant. I said, oh my God, where's Dave? And she goes, he's not here. I was convinced it was someone who infatuated with her and knew that the two couples knew each other. I never thought it was him. And then I called the police. I called my dad, who drove down from Middletown. One of my good friends from college lived nearby. He came over to my house. I called the cops. I called hospitals. I called everybody. And one of my friends, Joe Jordan, from college, as I said, came over to my house, and he helped me, supported me, because I was a basket case. I was scared to death. And Springdale police, I called them, talked to them. I battled with them for 4 days, because the stereotype is the husband always does it. And I was accused of all that. Well, you beat her up, or you're having an affair and she's getting even with you. And I was infuriated. I was just infuriated. While she was, quote unquote, missing, David Brewer and his wife came down to our house because we had organized a group of people to pass out flyers all over Southwest Ohio. Can you guys hear me okay? Because a couple of people look like they're straining. But anyway, and David Brewer and his wife came down and to help us pass out flyers. And then he left. Well, I should back up a little bit, because that Thursday night also, with the Springdale police, they wouldn't let me file a 24 hours of missing person report. Joe, my friend, knew the area, and he said, Joe, I'm going to go look around because I know the area better than you. And he found Sherry's car. And it was hidden in an apartment complex right behind Hotel Row, if you will, and near Springdale. And the police, I talked to them. I said, let's go over to the car. And the cop took me over there. And I said, we got to open the trunk. And they said, I will arrest you if you open the trunk. And so Joe and I stayed there and watched the car all night. And of course, once the cop left, I went over and I opened up the trunk. And Sherry was not in that trunk. So then, the next day, as I said, a lot of people came over and helped for the next few days. I was in battles back and forth with Springdale cops. March 26th was a Tuesday morning. And I called the Springdale cops and said, what's going on? Because I knew they had interviewed me the day before. They were interviewing Joe Jordan because they were suspicious of him. How did he find the car? And they were interested in Brewer. Well, the cops came over I called them that morning. They come over. They say, the door's open, and a priest and 2 cops walked in. I collapsed. I said, Brewer killed her, didn't he? Yeah. So, as it turned out, I learned a lot of this later, he was infatuated with her and tricked her into coming over. I told you about the stereo speakers and the pregnancy. And he testified that she went crazy when he tried to spring on her. He wanted to start an affair, despite all the media back then and all the different stories. He said she freaked out. He said, Joe's going to kill you. Joe's going to kill you for doing this. He ended up beating her up, raping her, tying her up, throwing her in the trunk of the car, binding her with speaker wire, as I said, and tape. And he drove all over Southwest Ohio with Sherry in the trunk and the dog in the trunk, except about 4 hours after the encounter at the hotel, he let the dog loose. But only after he removed the tags that had Sherry's name on it. So clearly, it was a premeditated murder. But he drove all over the place, and he was up near Beaver Creek, Ohio. Sherry managed with lipstick and a big envelope to write, "Help me, please." And she got it out of the trunk. And he never knew this. He never knew anything about this. But a bunch of people got the license, called the cops, and eventually Brewer talked to the cops that night and convinced them he was pulling a prank. And a hitchhiker he said he picked up. Or that was one of about 7 versions he told. But he talked to the police about 8:30, and then he said, he talked to the police. The police said, "We need to see you in your car." And so he said, "Well, I need about 30 minutes. Can you hear me? They need about 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And he took her out to a deserted farmland. And he stabbed her 14 times, took a necktie, broke her neck, because he was my size, and as I said, Sherry was very small. And then slit her throat and threw her in a ditch, went to the police station, noticed he had blood on his hands and feet, washed it off, and then went up and talked to a sergeant who said, "What's this prank you've been pulling today?" He knew nothing about the sign until that point. Anyway, they ended up citing him for inducing panic. And he went home. And as I said, he came over to my house to help us, quote unquote. Now, I was a mess. I was crying 24 hours, 7 days a week. I moved in with my mom and dad. And I know I drove them crazy. If there was any good that happened that day, it was that the crime happened in Greene County, New Jersey. I'm in New Jersey now, but in Greene County. And Bill Skank was the prosecutor, and he had a very advanced victim witness program. Jeanette Adkins led that. And I met Bill for the first time. I can't tell you how soon. And Bill asked me, he goes, "Joe, this case is so obvious." He goes, "Here's your options. Death penalty," and I think it was life, 25 years at the time. I'm not sure. But, I told him, "Death penalty? Kidding me?" And he says, "I'm not going to do what you want. I just want to know what you think." I said, "Mostly I want you, Bill, to get her name out of the mud, that he's drugged her, and that the media, backed up." Well, as it turns out, he went to trial in September of 85. He was found guilty. 2.5 days. And then a month later, he was sentenced to death. I think, I just talking to Derek earlier, the first time I talked to him, I think they went to death row pretty much the same day. So that's what happened to Sherry. As I said, I was a mess. I wanted to die. I checked into psychiatric units of hospitals off and on. And I just had a hard time. I had always been a hard worker and succeeded, but I couldn't get any motivation. So then, we come to where the appeals started. And the appeals process, to me, were a nightmare. I think one thing that's consistent here is everybody agrees that all the speakers that talk agree that the system does not work. It's horrible. It's a horrible system. And someone said it's the best system in the world. It may be, but it's still broken. And I lived it. I went through 18 years of appeals on a guy who there was zero doubt to his guilt. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand, why is this happening? So I was very, 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 very angry for a long time. And then I, at one point, wrote a letter to all congressmen at the time, whatever, in Ohio, the Senate and the House. And one person, I got responses from several, but one person said something to me that blew my mind. He said, "The death penalty process is not supposed to be efficient. It's supposed to be effective." And, I'm like, duh. It's supposed to be efficient. Any system's supposed to be efficient. That's my opinion on it. Well, it's broken. Anyway, the execution date was April 29, 2003. Sherry's mom, Myrtle, Bill Skank, the prosecutor, myself witnessed it. Lethal injection, all due respect to everybody, he went to sleep. I'm not saying I was looking for pain and agony. I'm not saying that. But he went to sleep. I was just sick of people saying, he's kind of a victim too, and all. I couldn't stand it. And I felt good. I felt like I had attained what I wanted after 18 years. And I felt good for 2 days. And then my son was at a Special Olympics event. He's very sick. And this was 2 days after I got back from the execution. And he was at the Special Olympics. I was crying. I told my wife, Christine, my second wife, I said, I got to go somewhere. I don't want the kids to see me crying. And I went off to the woods. That doesn't sound right, but I moved over out of the way of the Olympic field, and I called my father. And I was hysterically crying, and I said, Dad, I got what I wanted. Why am I crying? I can't stop it. And he told me that, son, your mind, one of you two spoke about it earlier, your mind, as smart as you are, your mind convinced you that once Brewer was executed, she was going to walk through the door. Even though I knew that wasn't possible, something in my mind was there, and I bought that, That's why I'm upset. Even though intellectually and consciously I didn't think that. I knew that wasn't possible. So I became angrier and angrier. I was appalled, to be very honest, at what the Ohio Public Defenders got away with. And I got consumed with the whole process. Even after he was executed, I was consumed. And then February 14th, 2005, a little baby boy, was 9 at the time, was diagnosed with an incurable, terminal, rare genetic disorder. Only 5,000 people in the United States have it. And as I said, there's no cure. It's called Friedreich's ataxia, but it's a neuromuscular degenerative disease, and I've almost lost my son 4 times. It attacks the heart mostly, and he's had 4 heart attacks. He's been helicoptered down to Children's Hospital, Philadelphia, many times. I've been told 4 times by the specialist in CHOP, he's not going to make it. Start preparing. My little guy, he's a fighter, and he lives in a long-term care unit of a hospital. I'm sorry. I'm 2 miles from it, and I see him every day. It also impacted his older sister, Amanda, my baby doll, because it's genetic, and Amanda felt very guilty. She's like, why my baby brother? Why not me? And she developed some habits, and she was just having a hard time dealing with it, mostly because of guilt. Here's a picture, if you can see it. This was just a month ago. That obviously is the ugly guy, me. That's my little angel, Jacob, at his hospital. And that's my daughter, Amanda. These kids have been through hell. And they also were witness to me carrying all this anger around forever. And it got worse after Jake's diagnosis. I was like, God, come on. You took the love of my life, Sherry, from me. And I'm a little boy? I couldn't make any sense of it. I knew I was angry, and I couldn't do anything about it. I tried to get help, clergy and medical, but it was just still simmering. And I just never really learned how to deal with it. In my case, backing up, as I said, I was lucky in that the victim witness group and prosecutor Bill Skank had hearts enormous. And they, to this day, I talked to the 2 of them. And during the trial, leading up to the trial, I was always kept advised of what was going on. I still get phone calls from them, where they just want to know how I'm doing. And how's the kids? So I was lucky in that regard, because I know it was different than a lot of other counties. And again, I know that not all victims get that. And I know all family victim survivors suffer because it's a bewildering experience. You're in a fog. You don't know how to put your right foot ahead of your left foot for a long time. And again, these people helped me, but I think the state should do a lot more because not every county has a Bill Skank or a Jeanette Adkins in it. And I love to hear what's going on. You know, that part of this initiative is to help victim survivors because I think it's way overdue, mostly for others. You know, victim families, they want and need the truth about what's happening. That's what they want. They want the killer to be caught, obviously. We all want him to be proven guilty, you know, if it's appropriate. It's not like we're bloodthirsty people. And again, in my case, there was zero doubt. Reasonable doubt? It was zero doubt. Some people have lost a major breadwinner. There's help now for funeral expenses, I understand, in Ohio. But it takes a long time to get that money. I was lucky in that my family and friends put together a drive to collect money, donations, to help me pay for Sherry's funeral. Hey, I didn't have life insurance. I mean, we were too young. And then, you know, some other things. It's a simple thing, really, as far as what victim survivors need. We just need people to show they care. That's it. I know it's hard on people because they're not sure what to say. And they want to be careful they don't say the wrong thing. And I have some great friends that always told me, they'd be talking about something and go, oh, that kills me. I'm sorry, Joe. And so, you know, I understand how difficult it is, but all we want to do is just know that people care. And I had some great friends and family that I know they cared. They loved me. But not everybody gets that. Oops, sorry. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But there is, you know, victim families, there is something you can do. You've heard about the task force recommendations. I think it's way overdue, as I've already said. We need help, and it's about time. No disrespect, Derek, because what happened to you was horrible. That murder victim survivors get some attention from the state and some help from the state. My situation, again, was unique because of Greene County. But at the same time, I guess in theory, I feel like the death penalty can be appropriate in certain cases, but the system has to change. It's all about games. It's all about win versus lose. It's not about truth and justice. It's a game. And there's different motivations for each side. And who gets hurt? People like Derek and his family. People like me and my family. The system is broken. You know, if the death penalty is causing that, then, you know, my change of heart came for a lot of reasons, but just the system has to change. If the death penalty causes it and can be proved to me, which I don't think it can, then get rid of it. I don't have a problem with that. As Abe and I talked, I want to help, but I want to help murder victim survivors most, and I don't want things to happen like what happened to Derek at the same time, and I think it's possible for that to happen if it weren't for the games. It's possible. You can fill out those cards that Abe has, and I finally came. Well, let me back up one thing, because I forgot a very important part of this. When Sherry was missing after 2 days, she had left a card for me. I traveled on my job, and she had left a card for me that was hidden in the Bible, and we found it. My sister-in-law found it, and I read it, and it's very eerie. It said, I miss you more today than I did yesterday. Tomorrow's going to be really rough. And it was very eerie to me. And all this garbage that was out there about an affair infuriated me. And I pushed Bill Skank, you've got to introduce that card. Because they're going to have a problem. But he introduced it. And so that's another reason that I love him. Because he worked very hard to make Sherry be a real human being. I'll wrap this up. What made me change my mind? on the death penalty itself. And obviously, let's look at it very hard because it can be fixed. The system needs to be fixed. I finally came to grips with how I was still carrying around so much pain, even 26 years after the execution. I just couldn't deal with it. And Jakey and Amanda being sick, and my mom died also like 6 months after Jakey's diagnosis, so it was very hard for me. Having the hindsight I do now on how painful it was, it bothers me that current victim survivors don't get the help that I did. I would say this is that, I thought I attained a victory, but the word closure doesn't exist. It's way overrated. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. Third, I've had some incidents in my life which opened my eyes. I've developed more compassion for people in society who some might deem as being the dredges of society. I've cried with them. I've prayed with them. And I've looked into their eyes and I saw a hopelessness that really ate me up. All of those things helped me come to the different mindset than I had then. Let me be clear. I'm not sorry that Brewer was executed. He got what he deserved. But looking back, I think I possibly could have been better off if there was no death penalty because I didn't have the foresight then to realize how awful the system is, and it ate me up. One story I'll tell you, I was consumed with it, as I said. One story I'll tell you that is very hard for me to tell. That little girl was 5 years old in 1995, 10 years after the murder, and well into the appellate process. And I was sitting in the sunroom reading a briefing from the Ohio Public Defenders this big, and she's out back swinging. And she goes, "Daddy, come on out and play with me." And I'm like, just a minute. I'm pouring over this, I'm really angry. Just a minute. Then she comes in, "Daddy," and she grabbed everything and threw it off my lap. "You're going to play with me, Daddy." And then I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing? I've allowed myself to be consumed by this crazy system, and I've kind of turned my back on my family. I didn't do that consciously, but in hindsight, I think I did. My priority should have been my life and my loved one. I know I was a good father. I'm a good father today, but I could have been better if I didn't have to deal with all this stuff and allow myself to be consumed with it. Just remember, though, when I made the decision, or I talked to Bill Skank on my thoughts, there was no such thing as life without parole. And so if I had it to do all over again in that situation, I would say death penalty. But now I've got hindsight, and I'm like, whoa. And it just worries me that there's other murder victim survivors out there who are in my shoes from back then, and they think that it's going to make them feel better. And I'm living proof, at least in my case, that it doesn't work. You don't feel better. It ate me up. So that's why I'm asking every one of you tonight to join and support, did you say OTSE earlier? OTSE, I call it, tonight, and help pass these reforms on the way to improving the death penalty process, the system itself, if not get rid of the death penalty. I don't want to say that I'm totally against the death penalty now, but I certainly am a lot more aware of what it brings. And, in a lot of cases, certain things like what Derek went through should have never happened. I read a book called I Am Troy Davis, a Kid in Georgia, and it was all garbage why he got executed. So I support everything that's going on right now, and Abe's trying to tell me to shut up right now, so I will. I thank you for your time and your patience, and let's fix this system.